Hey there, in this video I'm going to take a dull knife and make it a really sharp knife using the Lansky system. I'm just going to go through the steps. I'll probably fast forward like the actual guts of the work, but I'll stop before each stone and sort of let you know how it's going and what I'm doing, and should be able to show that with this pretty basic little tool you can get those edges that you do see, you know, doing all that cool phone book slicing stuff. It just takes a bit of time and it's a little bit clumsier than with the super expensive KMEs and Edge Pros. So anyway, this is the Cold Steel American Lawman. This is in CTS XHP, which isn't a super easy steel to sharpen. I'd say it's about probably halfway between, you know, really easy and really hard. It's yeah, but it's a good steel. It takes a good edge. It's seems like it's a pretty fine grained steel, so it's not. In my experience, it takes the best edge being a little bit on the shiny side rather than on the toothy side, but yeah, maybe we can try two different edges at some point. At any rate, I'll be dulling this first, and I'll be just showing you how dull it is, and then we'll be sharpening it up again. Alrighty, so a great way to dull a knife is to rub it against a stone or ceramic or something that is harder than the steel. So here we go. Alrighty, so now we've got a pretty dull edge. So it's dull to the touch. I mean, it's still obviously sharper than the spine, but you know, in terms of actually cutting things, it's not going to cut rope. Certainly won't shave arm hair. It actually feels like smooth over my arms, pushing quite hard, giving me a Chinese burn at the most. So it's very dull indeed. What we're going to do now, we'll rig it up to the Lansky system and we'll fix it, we'll make it better. Alrighty, so the good thing about this knife, and it makes it a bit easier to do on a Lansky system, is it has a flat before the edge, and the flat is pretty straight, and so therefore it is a great place to use for a clamp. Because that way when you flip the clamp over, on a flat sometimes, there is a slight difference in edge. Nothing that usually makes too much of a practical difference, but still, difference nonetheless. So you simply get your clamps. These ones are getting towards the end of their life. The rubber's starting to degrade a bit because I've been using it so much. Fix it to the flat part, and I usually try and make sure that the flatness of the clamp is in line with the flat of the blade, like with the straight part of the blade, so these two lines are parallel. If that makes sense. So wind this back one down, which will apply upward, downward pressure on the front of the clamp, and then I finish it off with my Victorinox Explorer. I get the screwdriver out. There we go, and make sure it's still straight, and then you really wrench that one down there. So that's on pretty tight. So that is how you'll work from now on. You'll have you'll be doing this side a bit, and then you just flip it over, and then you do this side a bit. I have the stand attachment, which does make it a bit easier to do. So you just somewhere to hold it, so you're not always just holding it in your hand like this. Although you can do that, completely valid. But yeah. So that's what we'll be starting with, and then we'll be looking at the stones we're going to use. So we'll get them out. Alrighty, so these will be the diamonds and ceramics and leathers that we'll be using today. So I'll be using a coarse, medium, and then a fine diamond stone first. So the coarse is what I'll be using to really set that edge and get things straight again, get all the damage that I just did off the knife, get things in a roughly it'll be a fairly jagged little edge, but it'll be one that'll cut still better than what it is now. You'll start to get a real burr forming up with this one, which will then be gradually diminished by these next two stones, I find. So this is probably the equivalent of about maybe a 200 grit stone or something like that, but in diamonds, so it certainly does the cutting work fast enough for me. KME, for example, though, has a coarse diamond stone called the Beast, which is 50 grit, and that just a few passes of that will get most edges true again. And then you've got the medium, which is about 400 grit, I believe. And this is where you start to sort of go from a shape to a sharpen. And then you go, which is really the fine's job, to become sharpened into like a polish or a hone or a finish, really. If you stop at this finish, you get what is a fairly toothy edge. You could even stop at this finish for almost a little micro serration edge, which is actually best for some steels. However, for this knife here, I'm going to then jump onto the ceramic stones. I'm going to go to the 600 grit ceramic, which just seems a little bit, I think because it works up a slurry when you use it with the Lansky honing oil, seems to make it a bit more of a polishing style stone, as well as, you know, a finishing stone. And then to get that mirror polish, I'm going to jump onto the 1000 grit, which is more or less to the touch, feels more or less like a smooth stone. And then this one, which almost feels like a gloss, which is a sapphire, I think a 3000 finish. And yeah, this one's just really hard and really smooth though. And yeah, the oil and the stuff just doesn't even stick to it. Whereas this one, you actually have to wash this with detergent to get this white again. Not that it really matters. And then finally I'll be finished with a leather strop, and I'll be using my my Josco cutting compound on it. And that is what gets off the burr, or like the jagged parts of the burr, and more or less straightens everything out and gives it a really nice final polish. So that's the stones. The stones are fixed to these rods. So say, the way that you get it, because people are like, oh, how high do you put the rod? The way I've seen them do it in their videos is you put it in line, so open that all the way, you put it all the way, you put it in line with the actual bottom of the stone. And the best way to do that, just by resting it down on the table, making sure everything's flush, so like that, making sure everything's flush on the table, and then tightening it up from there. And that gets, as long as all your stones like that, you'll get a nice even edge. Alright, so this is the first stage of the process here. I'm going to go with a 710 degree edge on this stone. That's on this knife, sorry, that's a fairly steep angle, but I think it's what it was wearing originally, because this is quite a tall bevel. I can't remember which one I did, but it looks like it's backed up a bit from a factory edge. So I'm going to guess, I think I've done 20 degrees on this one before. So this part here is very simple. You don't need any oils or anything like that. You use these diamond stones dry. And all I do, and the Lansky literature says just to do pushes, like this, like that, but I've never had any issues going up and down like this, all across the edge. I'll stop there for a second and I'll show you, hopefully I can zoom in enough. You'll see that there's a fair bit of powder that started to come off the knife. You can see the greyness just on the black there. It shows up really well on this knife. And that is the material being worn back a little bit. Obviously you're taking a bit of steel away to make for a new knife edge. So this is happening, and it will happen on both sides. I'm going to swap the knife over now and start to shape the other side. You can see a bit of blackness along here. I'll just zoom that in. Just if you look right on the edge, you can see there's just a bit of burring and just steel that's being pushed over the edge. Totally normal, totally fine. The tip's always a bit tricky. When you get to the tip, the stone's wide enough to sort of, from above, you can sort of see, as long as you keep the tip in the middle, keep the stone as flat as you can, you'll be absolutely fine. If you do it differently on your Lansky, please let me know in the comments what I'm doing wrong or what I'm doing just differently, and what different results you get. I'd be interested to hear. Righto. As far as I can tell to my naked eye, and also hopefully to my magnifying glass, yes, the edge is being affected all the way along the blade. So that's a good way of seeing things there. Maybe if I zoom in, you'll be able to see for yourselves. So if I pull this back here, get it in focus. So with this, I can zoom in. I mean, it's hard, so you're not going to see what I see, but you can really get a close-up of the edge all the way down, and just make sure those new straight up and down lines you're putting in are getting all the way to the cutting edge. So what I'll do is I'll flip it over, I'll do it again, because this is a pretty hard steel. I'll do another pass with this one, as long as you spend roughly the same time on each side. I've never noticed anything too adverse. So I'll be doing that just once more, and then I'll be moving on to the next stone. With regards to pressure, I'm putting like just moderate pressure, but I'm kind of putting like a forward plunging pressure into each cut. It probably does shorten the life of my diamond stone just a little bit, but they're so cheap I'll just get another one once this one seems to be losing effectiveness. Alright, so I'm happy with my edge so far. I'm going to be switching to the medium stone just to start sort of actually sharpening and bringing it up to a recognisable edge rather than looking so machine-like as it does now. A little bit more on this side. Polish, polish, polish. And you see even now it's starting to, what I'll do is once I've done this side, I'll take a photo of each side and I'll show that on the screen after this cycle, and you'll see what the difference is between the 400 and the 600 even, because there is a bit of a difference, I think. Alright, maybe I can just show you on the camera. Let's have a look. Macro mode should kick in, I hope. So that's the side I've just polished. Up on the edge there, I'll hold it still and maybe I'll do some zooming in post-production. So that's the side I've just kind of polished up, or you know, sharpened up with the 400. And then on the other side, the 600 is, there's a fair few more like lines and sort of more machine-like finish on it still. But we'll do the same on the other side and make it nice and even. Now, if you wanted a super toothy edge, you could probably actually stop there, because this, I suspect, will actually be a half decent cutting edge now. Let's have a look. Yeah, so that'll actually cut quite well, and you can feel it actually bite quite well through that rope. But which is obviously a huge improvement on when I first started, and there was nothing I could do to get this knife. I would have had to, you know, batten through the rope to get it through it all. But it's not quite what I'm after this time, so I'm just going to keep on going. Do a few more touches up with this on each side, and then move on to the next stone. Alright, so I reckon that will do me on this stone here, and I think I can now, I'll take the rods off of these two, and because I've definitely got my shape right, so my shape is exactly what I'm after, and that's really what these two, this is where they're useful as finishes. Once the edge is in the right shape, then once the damage is gone, you really can put these aside. And then get your next step preps in order. So we want a rod on that one, and you want a rod on that one as well, because these are the final two that we'll be using. Like that. There we go. So the next step I take is a fine diamond stone, and this is what I finished, say, the Maximet on when I did my Maximet cut test. Finished on fine diamond and then a strop to get rid of the burr. Like strops don't get rid of burrs as well unless they've got a compound on them. That's what I've noticed anyway, so that's what I did. But this will put a completely fine edge on most knives. In fact, when you buy the diamond kit of the Lansky, this is the finest stone that you get. So there you go. The sounds will be much less intense as well once you get to these finer stones. And I use a little bit less pressure as well, because this is really just about the finish of the edge from this point onwards. Two schools of thought from this point. If you start doing now circular motions, apparently that is what will give you a more polished edge in the long run if you do that motion with the rest of your stones. The up and down, one of my commenters suggested stick with up and down, and I think I noticed a slight difference. I mean, a lot of this stuff is a bit placebo-ish, I think. Once your knife is, super sharp, it's super sharp and probably as super sharp as you need it to be, but still interesting thought, and to be honest, this is just an easier motion for me, so I just keep doing this one. And again, you can sort of start to see there's even a little bit of reflection coming up there. It's a lot lighter than even the other side, again, which is, a bit more machine-like even compared to this one. So you really do lose those deep scratches as you move on into your finer stones. So I'll finish with this side here, and then it's probably time for me to get the daughter out the bath. Alright, so that is actually a very sharp edge to the touch even now. Should definitely cut through rope, no worries. Sorry, it's just a bit awkward with the guide in the way, but yeah, no worries at all going through rope. Yeah, we're on the beginning, or on the way, definitely. This is probably about as sharp as a factory edge would come from cold steel, actually. Best way to look at it. They'd use a belt of about this grit and then finish it. So this is probably as sharp as you actually need, but the rest of it's kind of just a bit of gravy. So, all right, so we've got an edge that has it's got a shine to it now, which is good, and it's definitely a workable working edge. We'll just clear this crud off. These next ceramic stones, they work with a little bit of oil just to keep them from getting bound up and just to keep them floating nicely over the stone. Into the 17-degree hole, of course, that's where we're working. Just on a side note, I did notice, I sent these to a professional sharpener, or I sent some knives that I'd sharpened previously to a pro, and he said that when I'm using 17 here, because I use it with the rod up the top, it's actually closer to a 15 or a 16 degree, because apparently they measure from the bottom of the hole. Who would have thought that? So there's, down the bottom of the hole where the rod is in, yeah, adds a degree or so. But at any rate, it's good enough for me. So yeah, I've got a little bit of oil just the back of my stone, similar motions with same motions really. Just going to go up and down the edge, and this is where you really start to polish the whole thing out. Oil spreads over the stone so you can start doing longer motions. Yes, that is good. So now I've got this edge and I can know roughly where to put the clamp. I should be able to, now to sharpen this knife, just start at this step, or maybe the fine diamond, rather than doing that profiling again, You can see the oil gets pushed sort of over the edge and sort of hangs on the other side, so then when you flip the knife, it's just sitting there and just all full of bits of steel and probably bits of stone and all sorts. I'm happy to let it sit there, makes a bit of a slurry sort of thing, gets the polish going. I'll wipe it off when I swap stones though. Alrighty, kitties are in bed. Let's do a few more passes with this stone here, I think. Because from this point on, it's really how polished you want the edge. I'm going to go for a fair amount of polish. Alrighty, got a wipe on the old pants to get that oil off and we'll be able to see what we're looking at. There we go, so as you see, it's looking to becoming quite a nice little edge there already. Now we'll switch over to the yellow stone. Give that a bit of a wipe down, just get some sisal fibres on there is all. Bit of oil at the bottom there, like so. Smear it up there a little bit, that'll be fine. 17 mark, and now really low resistance, it just almost glides over it. Between this one and the next one, that's really what you'll be setting your polish with. Alright, we're moving on to our last stone. Wipe the oil off my pants again. And we've got, yeah, quite a nice shiny looking edge there, springing to life. Bit of another drop of oil on this bad boy. Okay. And if you thought the last one felt smooth, this one is just like, it's almost hard to believe it's doing anything. That will be plenty of polish for me, I believe. So now I'll grab my strop. Clean off last time's gunk. Now get my Jusco compound, which is this stuff here. Bit of a rub. Okay, just get some whiteness on that strop there. And now we're just going to go and we're going to move away from the edge again. I'll just wipe the oil off on my pants once more. Going to move just away from the edge with this one, so just downwards. And this will do a bit of cutting of the burr. It'll cloud up the edge a little bit just to begin with, while the compound does its work. Try and get you all a better angle. Alrighty, so that should have got most of the crap off. So last step, I just wipe off this stuff again and just do one like dry pass just with the strop, kind of rough the strop up a little bit. That. And that is your edge done. I'm pretty confident just to take it straight out the thing. Zoom out there. Now let's just check on the old wrist hair, shall we? Let's have a look. There we are, I hope that's clear enough. Super, shaving sharp, crazy shiny, polished edge. Tuft of hair still on there. It's about ready for, I reckon, an CTS XHP Unleashed edge test, which you can probably expect the next couple of days. Alright, and the rope, of course. Go straight through the rope. Boom. no worries at all. Alright, so dull edge to sharp using a pretty cost-effective Lansky system. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys.